Hey everybody, it is Dak here from the Ed Boys, and welcome to my top 10 low requirement moneymakers. Low requirement can be a fairly broad term, usually depending on what your actual levels are, but I'll be looking at methods here that require less than 50 in any specific level, in some cases having no level requirement at all. The order of this list is based off of a few things, including the low level requirement, how much money you need to get started, how enjoyable the method is in my opinion, the XP rates that come along with the money, and even the AFK factor. This does mean that your personal top 10 low requirement list might look a little different than mine. Keep in mind when it comes to low requirement moneymakers, you shouldn't expect to be getting rich quick here. For the most part, the lower the requirement, the less money a money-making method is going to make. There's got to be some balance in there. Also, keep in mind, this is not a guide for any of these methods specifically, it's just a list of them. I'm going to link any guides that I do have for these in the description. I do appreciate all the support lately. If you have been enjoying the videos, be sure to subscribe and follow me on Twitch for more content. That link is in the description. Now let's finally get into the list. I'm going to start with a method that I featured early in a couple of my money-making series that I've done, and that is turning flax into bowstrings. This requires 10 crafting to start, which is easily obtainable off of Tutorial Island with either leatherworking or pottery. Flax are insanely cheap at the moment, costing that minimum 1 coin a piece, but usually insta-buying at 3 GP per flax. This means that you need very little cash to get started. With 1,000 coins, you can get a little over 300 flax. That would take you about 15 minutes to turn into bowstrings at the Lumbridge Castle. You can then sell those bowstrings back for almost 43k currently, which is a very solid starting cash stack for any new accounts that are maybe less than an hour in. Overall, you can make about 1,300 bowstrings an hour at the Lumbridge Castle, which works out to be about 185k an hour currently. This is not a ton of money in the long run, but like I said, that could be expected with lower requirements, so something that you can do so quickly off of Tutorial Island, this is pretty good cash. In the number 9 spot, I do have unfinished potions. Mostly unfinished Ronar potions, but I will be featuring those toad flax a little bit too. Just about every unfinished potion does make a profit, and it happens that Ronar potions tend to make a lot of money since prayer potions are in such high demand at all times, and you only need 30 herb lore to do these. You can make around 3,000 potions an hour, which currently would profit about 750k an hour from Ronar potions. The only problem for low requirements here is how expensive the Ronar potions are, meaning you need a lot of money to get started. That's where Toad Flax potions can come in handy. These are only like 300k GP an hour, which is a lot lower, but still not bad for a low requirement, and they just need 34 herb lore to get started. These are a lot cheaper, so you don't need nearly as much money when you're going into it, but if you do have a few mil to buy supplies, that can be very helpful. Overall, only needing 34 in a skill that's as fast as herb lore, you can make pretty solid cash with unfinished potions. At the number 8 spot, I do have gold jewelry. I could put more than just gold jewelry on this part of the list, but gold is specifically the lowest requirement, so we'll be mainly focusing on that. At level 8 crafting, you can make unstrung gold amulets using gold bars and an amulet mold at a furnace. The simplest good furnace to use is right next to the Edgeville Bank. Gold amulets are also free to play, which makes this even lower requirement. It's possible to make up to 1,500 amulets an hour, which is currently 60k GP an hour. This isn't a ton of money, obviously, but it's very AFK, and really only takes like 10 minutes right off of Tutorial Island to be prepared for it. If you are a member, you can make gold bracelets instead, which actually only requires 7 crafting and do have a much higher profit margin at the moment. You make a little over 200k GP an hour currently, which is a lot better and just as AFK. In terms of low requirements, making jewelry does not require a huge startup in terms of cash or levels, and it can make some pretty solid AFK money almost right off of Tutorial Island. So I almost put this higher up on my list, but I did ultimately decide number 8. And for my number 7 spot, I've got maybe the most controversial pick, which is going to be Nature Runes. Nature Runes require 44 rune crafting, which is not that far below the 50 requirement that I had brought up, but still is not very difficult to get. You also need to complete the Enter the Abyss mini quest for access to the Abyss. To get through the Abyss, you're going to need some mining levels, agility levels, and thieving levels. Technically, there's other options in there with woodcutting and fire making, but the mining, agility, thieving is what I tend to go with. You don't need a specific level in any of those skills to get through the shortcuts, but the higher your level, the better of a chance your character has to get through them. So with only 30 in each of these skills, you could do fine, but technically if you had like 90 in each of these skills, it would go a little bit better. There are some aggressive monsters in this multi-combat area too, which means that having a decent defense level isn't going to hurt you, but even just 20 or 30 defense and a weak shield is going to get you through pretty easily, maybe having to eat up or heal up at the bank occasionally. There is a lot of running too, so having graceful is not going to hurt you, but it's also not a requirement. None of these specific requirements for this method are very difficult to get, but there's a few of them which makes this lower on my list than it could have been. Overall, buying Pure Essence is insanely cheap, so you don't really need a lot of money to get started, though you are going to want to buy a handful handful of Amulets of Glory, but those are also pretty cheap. And even right at 44 rune crafting, making nature runes is pretty good cash. You'll see maybe 400 to 500k an hour right at that 44 mark, and at 50 you get a big jump from that new essence pouch. In the long run, this moneymaker can easily make over $1 million an hour, but once you get to that point, it's not really a low requirement moneymaker. Either way, the money-making potential is very high with this method, which is going to make it land on this list, but not quite high. Again, it really comes down to the fact that there's multiple requirements, even though they're all pretty low. If there was only the one rune crafting requirement, this may have even made number 1 on my list, because it makes really good cash, it's not that hard to do, and doesn't take that long to be prepared for. At the number 6 spot, I do have a mining method, and I'm throwing the Motherlode Mine on the list. Motherlode Mine only requires 30 mining to get started, though it's going to be a little bit slow right at 30 mining. That's kind of the case with most moneymakers, though. Lower levels make for slower cash. Motherlode Mine is some of the only somewhat AFK ways to train mining, which makes it a pretty viable method all the way to 99, so even though it makes the list for low requirements, it can still be pretty good with high levels. The mining XP is not bad overall, so it's not going to take you very long to start unlocking higher tier ores like gold and eventually myth. I'll admit, the AFK factor puts this higher on the list than maybe it should be, but I'm a pretty big fan of anything AFK, and that's really difficult to find with mining, especially while also profiting and having good XP rates. This is also the only way to get the coal bag in the game, which is very important to get early on if you plan on doing the blast furnace. I personally would consider the blast furnace a low requirement moneymaker, but it's not going to be on this list, and it's only getting an honorable mention right here. To be honest, if I put it on this list, I'd really have to put it at number 1, and that would be another list I've made where blast furnace was at number 1, and I'm looking to get a little bit of variety. But blast furnace is also a really good low requirement moneymaker, which helps out with Motherlode Mine, giving you that coal bag. Coal bag basically doubles the speed of blast furnace. At the number 5 spot, I've got the only combat-related method on the list, which is going to be Chaos Druids. Chaos Druids are very easy to kill and very easy to access. With low defense, they're really not bad for training your low levels, and they have some decent drops, including Ranar herbs, which can add up nicely for a fresh account. I would wait for 20 attack and strength to have myth weapons and some decent hits, but they're only level 13, so you really don't need that much to get started. In general, there's not a lot of good options for making money at low to mid-level combat. With high-level combat, stuff is going to make so much better money that it tends to make up for any money you didn't make at first. So the goal is normally to get fast XP through the early levels, sacrifice your money making, and then move on to those higher-level stuff sooner than later. Chaos Druids do provide a good option for not ruining your XP rates, but still getting some money out of the deal. My favorite place to do this is just north of Ardoin. You do need 46 thieving to get into this spot, which is good to barely meet those under 50 requirements, but you could also fight them in the Edgeville dungeon, which is very low-level wilderness. This does give a slight added risk, but it's also super low-level wildies, so it's going to be uncommon to see a PK that can actually attack you, and there's really not that much of a run to get out of there. Plus, you can just teleport away unless you get teleblocked. You can also use a looting bag at the wilderness location, which could potentially be dropped by the Chaos Druids conveniently. Chaos Druids are not going to add up to a ton of money per hour, but for minimal requirements, they're one of the best options for low combat. Since combat really doesn't have that many options like this for low requirement moneymakers, I have decided to throw this one on the list. My next money-making method has 0 level requirements, actually. Tanning hides at Al Kharid can make some solid cash, and you just need some money to get started with. Cowhides are pretty cheap in the first place, and they only cost 1 coin to turn into leather. These are not nearly as profitable as tanning dragon hides, though. You need more money to buy a bunch of dragon hides, and it's 20 coins per hide to turn it into leather. There's a lot of running involved, which means higher agility level and graceful clothing can help a lot, but it is not required. Either way, you're going to want to use stamina potions to make sure you continue running as often as possible. That's going to be very helpful for your profits if you're tanning dragon hides. It's possible to tan almost 3,000 hides an hour, but you could cut that in half if you're walking a lot. That'd be anywhere from 400k to 800k GP an hour with black dragon hides at the moment. Be sure to check the prices of hides before you buy, though. This really should be a rule of thumb for any moneymaker. Check the prices before you dive in. There are 4 different types of dragon hides to check. There's green, red, blue, and black. Normally I find black dragon hide has the biggest profit margin, but that's not accurate 100% of the time. Either way, all 4 of the dragon hides tend to always profit pretty well, so even if you happen to pick the one that's not profiting the most, you're still going to make good money out there. In my number 3 spot, I do have another method that only has GP requirements. Making planks is a very similar method to tanning dragon hides. Planks are always going to be in high demand for construction gains, making them pretty easy to sell, and overall making oak planks is not super expensive. There is a plank make spell on the Lunar Spellbook, but that's not what I'm talking about here. That actually loses you some money. The other way to make planks is at a sawmill, which there are a few in the game. The most common one is just northeast of Varrock at the lumber yard. This is the main low requirement sawmill since anybody can just walk up to it and the bank is remotely close. You can use a Varrock teleport to shorten up the run a little bit, and it would be cheaper to get your 25 magic for the spell rather than just buying teletabs, but teletabs are very cheap. There is a sawmill in the Woodcutting Guild, which requires 60 woodcutting and 75% Hostidius favor to get in. And that makes it a little bit above our low requirements, unfortunately. There's also a sawmill in the Elven City of Privdinus, which is an even higher requirement, having to complete a master level quest. And it's really more beneficial if you're looking to chop your logs right there and then just hand them in instead of buying the logs. Oak planks are pretty cheap to get started with, and when you're making the run from Varrock East Bank to the mill and then teleporting back, you can make about 1,500 planks an hour with pretty low effort. It's possible to speed this up by completing the Enlightened Journey quest and then using the balloon system to travel there and use dueling rings to bank. But that's going to be getting a little bit further from those low level requirements. Of course, if you are looking to make more money though, maybe a few extra requirements aren't going to kill you. Don't forget there is a fee when you get logs turned into planks. For oak planks, that fee is 250 coins. 250 coins plus the price of oaks makes about 270 GP per plank in costs, and an oak plank costs just over 500 coins at the moment. This is going to be about 300k to 400k GP an hour currently, with the only requirement being those Varrock teleports and a cash stack to get yourself going. I'm not quite as big of a fan of methods that give no XP, but this is an easy moneymaker that any account can do for good rates. At number 2, I've got yet another method that's not going to bring you any XP. This doesn't necessarily have 0 level requirements though. Mortmire fungus can be picked from the logs in the Mortmire swamp once a spell has been used to make the fungus grow. If you complete the Nature's Spirit quest, you get a blessed sickle, and that's what you can use to make this fungus grow in the logs. You do need 18 crafting for that quest, and you have to fight some level 30 monsters in some of the prerequisite quests, but overall it's a very simple requirement. Using the Blessed Sickle does drain your prayer points, which means that you're going to need to either have an altar in your house or use somebody else's house on World 330, and either way you just need to use a house tab to get there. You could also complete the Easy Ardoin Diaries for an Ardy Cloak, which has unlimited teleports to the monastery. Worst case scenario, you could just buy some prayer potions. It's obviously the most expensive way to do things is just by using prayer potions, but you don't need any requirements other than more money to buy prayer potions, and you're still going to make a profit while you're doing this. It's also highly suggested to unlock fairy rings by partially completing Fairy Tale Part 2. You don't need the fairy rings to do this, but if you have fairy rings and you had a fairy ring in your house, it can speed things up quite a bit. You could just run back and forth from the Canifis Bank. It's not a very long run. Also, if you've completed the Mauritania Hard Diaries, you're going to get double fungus from these logs, which just about doubles your profit, but obviously takes away that low requirement. What I like about this method is that it has very low requirements out the gate, which is just that Nature Spirit quest, but there's a lot of other ways you can speed up the method for anybody who wants to take the time and get more stuff done first. At a max speed, this moneymaker can land a little over $1 million an hour depending on some of those fluctuating prices, but at its lowest form, if you're just running to the bank, sipping prayer potions and running back, you're looking at around 300k an hour. And at my number 1 spot, I have what I consider to be the best ratio of cash to low requirements on this list. Enchanting Jewelry covers a variety of items ranging from low to high level stuff. Some of the low requirement jewelry that you can enchant would include sapphire rings to rings of recoil, emerald rings to dueling rings, and topaz amulets to burning amulets. Burning amulets require 49 magic and a little more money to get started, so we can focus on at least the rings. Sapphire rings can be enchanted with a level 1 enchant, which requires 7 magic. You need 1 cosmic rune and 1 water rune per spell, so you could just wear a staff of water, but it's obviously very cheap just to use 1 water rune per spell. There's currently a 270 coin profit per ring, which we'll dive into those rates in just a second. The emerald rings, you need level 2 enchant, which requires level 27 magic, and each spell is going to take a cosmic rune and 3 air runes. Emerald rings to dueling rings don't have a great profit margin at the moment. Obviously, these prices fluctuate, so sapphire rings currently are going to profit more, but emerald rings are going to be better XP if you're trying to get faster levels. When enchanting jewelry, you can either manually use enchant on each piece of jewelry or use it once and let your character auto do like a whole inventory at about half the speed. This gives a nice option for being click intensive and fast, or AFK and a little bit slower depending on how bad you need the multitasking time. You can do about 1,800 pieces of jewelry an hour if you're doing them manually, and cut that about in half if you're not clicking on each one. This makes sapphire rings currently 486k profit per hour, which is very good for only needing 7 magic and getting you some decent magic XP. Many magic training options end up costing money in the long run, so it's really nice to be able to profit early on this one. To me, having the ability to click on each piece of jewelry or just having your character auto do it is really nice. Having that mix of either click intensive or AFK that you can switch back and forth from so easily is pretty good. If you have a few minutes to focus on the game and actually click for a while, then go have at it, get some better rates. But if you then have to look away or walk away for a minute, at least you're not doing nothing when you walk away. You can still do an inventory automatically. That is going to end my low requirement money-making list, everybody. This is kind of a weird list to make because what exactly makes a moneymaker low requirement? I didn't want to just do it by how much money it makes too, because then there's kind of a discussion. Well, clearly the higher the requirement, the more money you're going to make in general. So it's all kind of just my opinion on which low requirement moneymakers I think are the best options. If you do have any moneymakers you enjoy, be sure to leave those in the comments section below so we can keep discussing. I appreciate you all watching this video. If you enjoyed or you just got some useful information, be sure to like and subscribe for more content. I also stream on Twitch, I am on Twitter, and I have a Discord, which all links are in the description. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. I do hope you enjoyed, and best of luck with your money-making grind.